The Galactic Concordat did not believe in diplomacy. They believed in arithmetic. To them, war was a simple, unbreakable equation. If you possessed more ships, more guns, and more resources than your enemy, you won. It was a philosophy that had served them well for 10,000 years. They had crushed the insectoid swarms of Xylar by outnumbering them 10 to 1. They had shattered the silicon mines of the core worlds by overwhelming their processors with data floods. They had never lost a war because they had never fought a fair fight. They always brought enough force to make resistance mathematically impossible. High Admiral Kale stood on the bridge of the Invincible, the flagship of the Grand Armada. He was a tall, imposing figure, with skin like polished obsidian and eyes that glowed with a cold blue light. He wore the heavy gold robes of his office, embroidered with the symbols of 100 conquered worlds. He looked out through the massive viewport at the stars ahead. Behind him, the Armada stretched into the void. 9,700 warships. There were dreadnoughts the size of small moons, their hulls bristling with heavy plasma lances. There were sun cruisers, fast and agile, designed to outmaneuver and outgun anything in their weight class. There were thousands of fighter craft, swarming like metallic bees around the larger capital ships. It was the largest fleet ever assembled in the history of the galaxy. It was a hammer made of steel and fire, designed to crush anything it touched. "Report," Kale said. His voice was deep, resonating in the quiet of the bridge. Sub-Admiral Vex stepped forward. He held a datapad, his fingers tapping quickly across the screen. "We have entered the Sol system, High Admiral. All 9,700 ships are present and accounted for. Fuel levels are optimal. Weapon systems are charged. Shields are at maximum capacity." Kale nodded slowly. He looked at the blue planet rotating in the distance. Earth. It looked small, fragile, a speck of dust in the vastness of space. "And the humans?" Kale asked. "Have they responded to our ultimatum?" Vex shook his head. "No response, High Admiral. Their communication networks are silent. Their military bases are dark. Their orbital stations are empty. It appears they have accepted their fate. They are hiding in their underground bunkers, waiting for the end." Kale smiled. It was a cold, predatory smile. "Cowards. They know the math. They know they cannot win. 9,700 ships against a single planet. It is not a battle. It is an execution." He turned to his tactical officer. "Prepare the primary batteries. Target their major population centers. New York, London, Tokyo, Beijing. We will glass their cities from orbit. Let them see the fire before they die. It will teach the rest of the galaxy what happens when you defy the Concordat." "Aye, High Admiral," the tactical officer replied. "Charging plasma lances. Targeting solutions locked." Kale watched the blue planet grow larger in the viewport. He felt a sense of satisfaction. This would be easy. It would be quick. It would be another victory added to the endless ledger of the Concordat. He did not know that the humans were not hiding. He did not know that they were not afraid. He did not know that they had been waiting for this moment for 50 years. The humans had not built a fleet to fight the Concordat. They had built something else. Something simpler. Something darker. And they were ready. Deep beneath the Swiss Alps, far below the snow-capped mountains and the quiet pine forests, lay the Global Defense Command Center. It was a marvel of human engineering, carved directly into the bedrock and shielded by hundreds of feet of solid rock and reinforced concrete. It was designed to survive a direct nuclear strike, but today it was being tested by something far worse. Director Elena Vance stood in the center of the main operations room. She was a woman in her late 50s, with sharp features, graying hair pulled back into a tight bun, and eyes that missed nothing. She wore a simple, dark gray uniform. There were no medals on her chest. Elena did not care about medals. She cared about results. The operations room was a massive, circular space dominated by a giant holographic table in the center. The table displayed a real-time, three-dimensional map of the Earth and the space around it. Thousands of red dots surrounded the blue marble. Each red dot was a Concordat ship. The room was filled with the sound of quiet typing hushed conversations, and the soft hum of the cooling systems. There was no panic. There was no screaming. The people working in this room were the best and brightest humanity had to offer. They were scientists, engineers, strategists, and mathematicians, and they were entirely focused on their screens. General Marcus Thorne walked up to Elena's side. He was a tall, broad-shouldered man with a face weathered by years of service. He looked at the holographic map, his jaw tight. "They are in position," Thorne said quietly. 9,700 ships. The energy signatures are spiking. They are charging their main weapons. Elena did not take her eyes off the map. "Targeting all major metropolitan areas," Thorne replied. "They are going for the population centers. They want to cause maximum casualties right out of the gate. It is a classic Concordat opening move." Shock and awe. Elena nodded. She had studied the Concordat. Humanity had known about them for 50 years. Ever since the first deep space probes detected the edge of Concordat space, Earth had been preparing. The world governments had not told the public. They had not wanted to cause a global panic. Instead, they had quietly united, pooling resources, technology, and intellect into a single secret project. They called it Protocol Mirror. "Are the civilian evacuation protocols complete?" Elena asked. "Yes," Thorne said. "The deep underground shelters are fully stocked. The population has been moved in phases over the last 5 years under the guise of urban renewal and subway expansions. The surface cities are mostly empty. Just automated systems and holographic projectors to make them look populated from orbit." "Good," Elena said. "And the array?" Thorne looked at her, a faint smile touching his lips. "The orbital mirror grid is fully active. The alignment satellites are in position. The kinetic drivers are loaded. We are ready, Director." Elena finally looked away from the map. She looked at the giant digital clock on the wall. It was counting down. "Let them charge their weapons," Elena said, her voice calm and steady. "Let them think they are gods. Let them think we are helpless. We will wait until the very last second. When they fire, we will show them what humanity has built in the dark." Thorne nodded. "Understood. Standing by for your mark." The room continued its quiet, focused work. There was no fear here. There was only the cold, hard calculation of a species that refused to be prey. The Concordat thought they were hunting a weak, divided world. They were about to learn that humanity's greatest weapon was not a big gun or a thick shield. Humanity's greatest weapon was patience. And physics. At exactly 1400 hours, Greenwich Mean Time, the sky above Earth changed. The Concordat fleet had moved into high orbit. From the surface, if anyone had been looking up, they would have seen the stars winking out, one by one, replaced by the massive, dark silhouettes of alien warships. The sheer scale of the armada was enough to block out the sun, casting a twilight shadow over the northern hemisphere. High Admiral Cale stood on the bridge of the Invincible, watching the timer count down. He had given the humans 10 minutes to surrender. The timer hit 0. "Time is up," Cale said, his voice cold. "Did they surrender?" Sub-Admiral Vex checked his console. "No response, High Admiral. Their military networks are active, but they are not transmitting any surrender codes. They are remaining silent." Cale sneered. "Fools. They choose death. Fire the primary gravity cannons. Maximum yield. Target the geographic centers of their largest cities. Erase them." "Firing," Vex said. Outside the viewport, the front of the 300 capital ships began to glow with a sickly purple light. The gravity cannons were massive weapons, designed to manipulate gravitational fields. When fired, they created a localized gravity well that crushed everything in the target zone under millions of tons of pressure, turning buildings, people, and bedrock into a flat layer of compressed dust. Beams of distorted, purple energy lashed out from the fleet. They traveled at a fraction of the speed of light, crossing the distance from orbit to the surface in a fraction of a second. They were aimed directly at New York, London, Tokyo, Beijing, and Mumbai. Cale watched the tactical displays, waiting for the satisfying flash of destruction, waiting for the sensor confirmations of millions of casualties. But the flash never came. Just as the purple beams entered the upper atmosphere, just above the cloud layer, they hit something. It was not a physical wall. It was an energy field. But it was not a shield in the traditional sense. It was a mirror. The orbital mirror grid, a network of thousands of highly reflective hexagonal satellites, angled themselves perfectly. The plasma beams hit the mirrors and bounced. They did not absorb the energy. They reflected it. But they did not just scatter the energy randomly. The mirrors were controlled by a central AI, Aegis, which calculated the perfect angle to reflect the beams back at their source. The sky above Earth became a kaleidoscope of light. The plasma beams, once aimed at the cities, were now aimed at the Concordat fleet. On the bridge of the Invincible, the alarms began to blare. The tactical displays, previously showing the peaceful blue curve of the Earth, suddenly lit up with thousands of incoming energy signatures. "High Admiral," Sub-Admiral Vex shouted, his voice rising in panic. "Incoming fire. Massive energy spike. It's our own weapons." Kale stared at the viewport. He saw the beams of plasma returning. They were brighter now, focused by the mirrors into tight, concentrated lasers. The sheer volume of energy bouncing back from the orbital grid was staggering. The humans hadn't just blocked the attack. They had caught it, focused it, and thrown it back with perfect geometric precision. "Evasive maneuvers," Kale roared, his composure shattering. "Raise shields. Full power." The Concordat ships tried to move, but there were too many beams, too many targets. The mirrors in orbit shifted in real time, tracking the movements of the alien fleet and adjusting the reflection angles to ensure maximum coverage. It was a web of light, and the Concordat was caught in the center. The plasma struck the Concordat shields. The Concordat shields were marvels of engineering. They were designed to absorb external attacks, dispersing the energy across a wide surface area to prevent hull breach. But they were not designed to handle their own frequency, amplified and focused by the human mirrors. The shields overloaded instantly. They shattered like glass under the pressure of their own power. The plasma burned through the hulls of the Concordat ships. Metal melted. Atmosphere vented into space. Crews screamed as they were incinerated by their own fire. One by one, the red dots on the holographic map in the Global Defense Command Center began to turn gray. "Hit confirmed," a tactical officer called out, his voice tight with adrenaline. "Target Alpha 1 destroyed. Target Alpha 2 destroyed. Target Alpha 3. Elena watched the map. She did not cheer. She did not smile. She just watched the numbers drop. "Keep the mirrors aligned," she ordered. "Don't let up. Make sure every shot finds its mark. Aegis is calculating the optimal bounce trajectories. Let the machine do the work." "Aye, Director," the officer replied. The battle lasted for 10 minutes. In those 10 minutes, the Concordat fleet was decimated. The elegant white ships, the pride of the galaxy, were reduced to burning hulks. The sky above Earth was filled with the debris of 1,000 dead dreams. The arithmetic of war had been rewritten, and the Concordat was losing the equation. Kale sat in his command chair, stunned. His ship was shaking violently. The lights were flickering, and the air smelled of burnt ozone and fear. The Invincible had taken a glancing blow from a reflected plasma beam. The starboard shields were gone, and the hull was scorched black. "How?" he whispered, his mind struggling to comprehend the disaster. "How did they do this?" Vex looked at his console, his hands trembling. The tactical readouts were a mess of error messages and casualty reports. "They didn't fight us, High Admiral. They just held up a mirror. Our shields are calibrated to disperse energy, but they can't handle the concentrated feedback of our own plasma. The frequency match is too perfect. The shields are collapsing from the inside out." Kale felt a cold knot form in his stomach. The Concordat had spent 10,000 years perfecting energy warfare. They believed that shields were the ultimate defense. But the humans had turned their ultimate defense into a fatal flaw. "Stop firing," Kale screamed. "Cut the plasma lances. All ships, cease fire immediately." The order was relayed across the fleet. The remaining Concordat ships powered down their primary weapons. The sky above Earth stopped flashing with reflected death. The orbital mirror grid, having delivered its payload, powered down its active reflection modes and returned to a passive, dormant state. The silence that followed was heavier than the battle. Kale looked at the tactical display. Out of the 9,700 ships that had entered the system, over 3,000 were already destroyed or critically disabled. The rest were damaged, their shields flickering, their hulls breached. "Regroup," Kale ordered, his voice shaking. "Form a defensive perimeter around the flagship. We need to assess the damage and formulate a new strategy. They have used a trick. Clever trick. But they cannot sustain it. We still have 6,000 ships. We still have the numbers." But as the surviving ships began to move, trying to form a cohesive formation, a new alarm began to wail on the bridge. It was a different sound. Not the high-pitched whine of an energy overload, but the deep, rhythmic klaxon of a kinetic impact warning. "High Admiral," the sensor officer said, his voice barely a whisper. "I am detecting massive mass shadow signatures. They are coming from the moon. And from Mars." Kale frowned. "Mars? The humans have no bases on Mars. What is coming from Mars?" "I don't know, sir," the officer replied. "But the velocity, it is relativistic. They are moving at a fraction of the speed of light. Impact in less than 2 minutes." Kale stared at the screen. The Concordat had spent millennia fighting wars with energy. They had forgotten the brutal, unforgiving reality of physical mass. And humanity was about to remind them. Deep beneath the surface of the moon, in a crater that had been hollowed out and reinforced with titanium and concrete, a massive machine hummed to life. It was a railgun, but on a scale that defied imagination. The barrel was 3 kilometers long, built along the edge of the crater. Inside the barrel sat a solid slug of tungsten, weighing 50 tons. "Fire," the human commander on the lunar base said. The electromagnetic coils along the barrel discharged with a blinding flash of light. The tungsten slug was accelerated to 20% the speed of light. It left the barrel without a sound, a silent spear of death crossing the void toward Earth. Simultaneously, on the rust-red plains of Mars, similar railguns fired. The humans had not just built defenses on Earth. They had turned the entire solar system into a firing range. The slugs crossed the distance in minutes. To the Concordat sensors, they were invisible until the very last second. The alien point defense systems were designed to intercept missiles and energy beams. They tracked heat signatures and electronic guidance signals. But a 50-ton slug of cold tungsten moving at relativistic speeds emitted no heat and no electronic signal. It was just a rock moving too fast to see. "Impact imminent," the sensor officer on the Invincible screamed. "Evasive action. Brace for." He never finished the sentence. The first tungsten slug struck a Concordat cruiser. The ship didn't just explode. It ceased to exist. The kinetic energy of the impact was so immense that the cruiser's molecular bonds were instantly broken. The ship vaporized into a cloud of superheated plasma and expanding gas. Then the rest of the slugs arrived. It was a hail of relativistic metal. The slugs punched through the weakened hulls of the Concordat ships like paper. There were no shields to stop them. The Concordat shields were designed to disperse energy, not to absorb the physical momentum of a 50-ton object moving at a fraction of light speed. The kinetic force shattered the shield generators and tore through the armor beneath. Ships were ripped in half. Engines were crushed. Command bridges were obliterated. The sheer physical violence of the attack was something the Concordat had never experienced. They were used to clean, elegant wars of light and heat. This was brutal, messy, and utterly devastating. On the bridge of the Invincible, Kale was thrown from his chair as a near-miss sent a shockwave through the ship's hull. The inertial dampeners failed, and the crew was slammed against the bulkheads. "Report," Kale coughed, pulling himself up. "The fleet is being shredded," Vex yelled, blood leaking from his ear. "The kinetic impacts are tearing through our hulls. We have no defense against physical mass at that velocity." They are using rocks, High Admiral. They are throwing rocks at us. Kale looked at the viewport. The space around Earth was a graveyard of burning metal. The arithmetic of war had failed them. The numbers didn't matter when the enemy could kill you with a single, invisible stone. Emergency jump! Kale screamed, his mind finally breaking under the weight of the defeat. Get us out of here. All ships, initiate emergency slipspace jump. Retreat. The surviving Concordat ships, those that still had functioning engines, turned away from Earth. They spooled up their slipspace drives, trying to tear open a hole in reality and escape the nightmare. But Earth had one final surprise. Activate the quantum anchors, Elena ordered from the bunker. Throughout the solar system, hidden in the asteroid belt, on the moons of Jupiter, and buried in the ice of Pluto, thousands of small, box-like machines powered up. These were the quantum anchors. They were designed to create a localized field of spacetime stability. When the Concordat ships tried to jump, the anchors activated. They didn't stop the ships. They stopped the slipspace rupture. The fabric of space around the Concordat fleet became rigid, immutable. The slipspace drives spun wildly, trying to tear a hole that refused to open. The drives overloaded. The engines exploded. The remaining Concordat fleet was trapped. They were dead in the water, their primary means of escape destroyed by their own overloading engines. The human railguns on the Moon and Mars continued to fire. The kinetic barrage was systematic, methodical, and relentless. Aegis, the orbital AI, coordinated the fire, ensuring that no ship was left intact. It was a dismantling. The humans were not just defeating the Concordat. They were taking it apart piece by piece, bolt by bolt. Kale watched as the last of his escort fleet was reduced to dust. The Invincible was the only capital ship left, and it was heavily damaged, drifting aimlessly in the void. He looked at Elena Vance's face on the main screen. She had opened a channel. She wasn't shouting. She wasn't gloating. She just looked tired. "High Admiral Kale," Elena said, her voice calm and clear. "You came to our home to destroy us. You brought 9,700 ships to glass our cities. You thought we were weak. You thought we were helpless." She paused, letting the words sink in. "You were wrong. We did not fight you with armies. We did not fight you with fleets. We fought you with physics. We fought you with patience. And we won." Kale slumped in his chair. He knew it was over. He looked out the viewport at the blue planet. It looked peaceful, quiet, unmoved. "Take your surviving ships home," Elena continued. "Tell your leaders what happened here. Tell them that Earth is not a target. Tell them that humanity is not prey. If you ever send another ship to our solar system, we will not just reflect your weapons. We will come for you, and we will not be so merciful." The channel closed. Kale sat in the silence of his broken bridge. He had brought the arithmetic of the Concordat to Earth, and Earth had sent it back broken and bleeding. After the kinetic barrage ceased, silence returned to the solar system. The orbital mirror grid powered down completely. The railguns on the Moon and Mars went cold. The quantum anchors deactivated, allowing the few remaining functional ships to limp away into the deep dark. In the Global Defense Command Center, Elena Vance looked at the holographic map. The red dots were gone. In their place were thousands of gray dots, representing the drifting wreckage of the Concordat fleet. "Status report," she said. General Thorne stepped forward. He looked at the data, his face pale but his eyes bright with relief. "The Concordat fleet is neutralized. Out of 9,700 ships, only 18 remain functional. They are heavily damaged, but their engines are still working. They are attempting to flee the system." Elena nodded. "Let them go." Thorne looked at her, surprised. Let them go? After what they tried to do. Decades later, the story of the battle was taught in schools across the galaxy. It was a story of how a small, primitive world had defeated the greatest empire in history. It was a story of how humanity had used intelligence instead of brute force. It was a story of how yes, Elena said. We don't need to kill them. We need them to tell the story. We need them to carry the message back to the Concordat. We need the galaxy to know what happens when you attack Earth. Thorn understood. He nodded slowly. Understood. I will order the tracking buoys to follow them. We will monitor their journey home. Elena turned to the communications officer. Open a channel to the surviving ships. Broadcast on all frequencies. The officer nodded. Channel open. Elena stepped up to the microphone. Her voice was calm, clear, and cold. This is Director Elena Vance of Earth. You came to our home to destroy us. You brought 9,700 ships to glass our cities. You thought we were weak. You thought we were helpless. She paused, letting the words sink in. You were wrong. We did not fight you with armies. We did not fight you with fleets. We fought you with physics. We fought you with patience. And we won. She looked at the camera, her eyes hard. Take your 18 ships home. Tell your leaders what happened here. Tell them that Earth is not a target. Tell them that humanity is not prey. If you ever send another ship to our solar system, we will not just reflect your weapons. We will come for you, and we will not be so merciful. She stepped back. The officer cut the transmission. The 18 surviving Concordat ships, battered and broken, turned their engines toward the outer rim of the solar system. They fled into the dark, carrying the tale of their defeat. The tally was complete. The galaxy had sent 9,700 warships. Earth had sent 9,682 back as wrecks. The 18 ships that escaped were not the only things left behind. 9,682 wrecks drifted in the void around Earth. They were twisted, burned, and shattered. They were monuments to the Concordat's arrogance. In the weeks that followed, humanity began the work of salvage. Thousands of human drones swarmed the debris field. They cut through the hulls of the alien ships. They stripped them of their technology, their weapons, and their data. They took the plasma lances, the shield generators, the slipspace drives. They downloaded every scrap of information from the Concordat computers. It was a treasure trove. Humanity had just acquired the technology of a galactic empire, free of charge. Engineers studied the alien materials. Scientists analyzed the energy signatures. Strategists reviewed the battle logs. They learned how the Concordat fought. They learned their weaknesses. They learned their secrets. And they improved upon them. The orbital mirror grid was upgraded with Concordat shield technology. The railguns were refined with alien alloys. The quantum anchors were enhanced with stolen slipspace data. Humanity did not just survive the attack. They profited from it. Director Elena Vance watched the salvage operations from her office. She saw the human drones working tirelessly, turning the enemy's dead ships into human progress. It is poetic, General Thorne said, standing beside her. They sent us their best, and we turned it into our future. Elena smiled. It was a small, satisfied smile. They sent us wrecks. We sent them back as lessons. The economic impact on Earth was immediate and profound. The influx of advanced alien technology sparked a new industrial revolution. Energy production became limitless. Space travel became faster and safer. The colonies on Mars and the Moon expanded rapidly, no longer constrained by the limitations of human engineering. Earth was no longer a primitive, struggling world. It was a rising power, armed with the secrets of its enemies. The news of the battle spread across the galaxy faster than light. The 18 surviving ships reached the Concordat capital. They broadcast their data logs. They showed the footage of the battle. They showed the mirror grid. They showed the kinetic barrage. They showed the destruction of the Grand Armada. The Concordat High Council was stunned. They had never lost a war. They had never faced an enemy they could not overwhelm. But Earth had not been overwhelmed. Earth had been untouched. The council convened an emergency session. They debated what to do. Some demanded revenge. They wanted to send a larger fleet. They wanted to glass Earth until nothing remained. But others were afraid. They had seen the power of the mirror grid. They had seen the precision of the kinetic drivers. They realized that attacking Earth again would be suicide. We cannot fight them, High Counselor Moros said. Their technology is different. It is not based on brute force. It is based on reflection, on redirection. We cannot beat them with numbers. We cannot beat them with energy. They will just send it back. What do you propose? Asked another counselor. Moros looked at the screen. He saw the image of Earth. Blue, green, beautiful. We withdraw, Moro said. We leave the Sol system alone. We mark it as a forbidden zone. No Concordat ship is to enter human space. Ever. The council murmured. It was a humiliation, a defeat, but it was necessary. Agreed, said the council. Moro sat down. He felt old. He felt tired. The Concordat Empire had ended. Not with a bang. Not with a war. But with a whisper. With a realization that they were no longer the masters of the galaxy. There was a new power. A quiet power. A dangerous power. Humanity. In the years that followed, the galaxy changed. The Concordat fractured. Subject worlds, seeing the weakness of their rulers, rebelled. Civil wars broke out. The empire that had ruled for 10,000 years collapsed into chaos. Humanity, meanwhile, thrived. They used the stolen Concordat technology to build their own fleet. But they did not build it for conquest. They built it for protection. They built it to ensure that no one would ever threaten Earth again. They expanded into the solar system. They colonized Mars. They mined the asteroid belt. They built stations on Jupiter's moons. They became a spacefaring civilization, strong and confident. And they remained neutral. They did not join the galactic politics. They did not seek allies. They did not seek enemies. They just watched. Other species came to visit Earth. They came to trade. They came to learn. They came to see the planet that had defeated the Concordat. They were always welcomed, but they were always reminded of the rule. Do not attack Earth. It was a simple rule, but it was enforced by the memory of 9,682 Rex. NCE and physics could overcome arrogance and numbers. Children learned about the orbital mirror grid. They learned about the kinetic drivers. They learned about Director Elena Vance. And they learned the most important lesson of all. Never underestimate the quiet ones. On Earth, the wrecks of the Concordat fleet were still there. They had been moved into a museum orbit, a ring of twisted metal that circled the planet. It was a reminder, a warning, a monument. People visited the museum. They walked through the hollowed-out hulls of the alien ships. They saw the burn marks. They saw the shattered bridges. They saw the empty command chairs. And they remembered. They remembered the day the galaxy sent 9,700 warships. And they remembered the day Earth sent 9,682 back as wrecks. It was a day that changed the universe. And it was a day that humanity would never forget. High above the Earth, the orbital mirror grid continued to spin. It was silent. It was invisible. It was waiting. It watched the stars. It watched the ships. It watched the darkness. And it was ready. For humanity had learned a valuable lesson from the Concordat. Peace is not given. It is taken. And it is kept with mirrors. The end.